Instantly notices her, obviously, and he goes. He's like drawn to her for some reason. He doesn't know why, and he's just like, man, I gotta go speak to this lady. So anyway, as he's sort of making his way over there, he sees the twins, like Axelrod and his twin, and he sort of like freaks out and runs away. And they eventually question him and like, what were you doing with that lady? Like, who was she? And they were basically, well, my voice just dropped again. They were basically saying that, they thought she was some sort of spy maybe, but he said when he initially saw her, he got into his head immediately, oh, she's an alien. That was the first thing that popped into his head. She's not of this earth. She's an alien. So it's like he was being monitored because he had contact with this group, basically. Anyway, just a little off story that was in there I thought was super interesting. Anyway, so Ingo is offered like $1,000 a day back in 75 to do this, and he's like, oh, fuck, sign me up, bro. So he's, again, like heavily warned, like, don't speak to anyone, do your job, get the fuck out, and don't talk to anyone about it. So when he agrees to jump on board with these guys, they basically say, okay, we'll contact you again at some point. So he's kind of just accosted one day, has a hood thrown over his head, thrown in the back of a van, and they whisk him away to what he believes was some sort of undisclosed underground location somewhere near DC, the capital. Okay. So Ingo Swan, he assumes that he'll be basically remote viewing targets of the Soviets or the Chinese or something, because it's some intelligence service that's whisked him away. And they didn't ever really this group never really revealed to him what the objective of what he was doing, but they wanted him. They basically told him they wanted him to remote view the far side of the moon, which didn't if you know remote viewing, you don't ever tell the remote viewer what you're supposed to be reviewing because that fucks with your ability because you instantly put your own biases in your remote viewing session. Like you imagine whatever could be over there, and that sort of starts to taint what you're seeing. It's called front loading, I guess, in remote viewing terms.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like it messes with the purity of the information coming through. When he was doing this afterwards, he brought in a couple of people to sort of double check his work. So he, like I said, he was really serious about the process and knew it wasn't exact. Like he knew, as much as we know about, looking into things with telepathy and stuff, we're still dabbling with it. It's not like we can just do this, but he was one of the best. But still, he brought in this guy called Paul Smith, and it was interesting that Paul Smith actually did line up a bunch of things. But it's like if you both see two wheels and handlebars, but one of the other people sees like, oh, it also has like a purple dragon's tail coming off and it's breathing fire.
Yeah.
Well, you discount that stuff and you say, okay, well, guess we're looking at a bicycle kind of thing. Anyway,
okay,
little bit of remote viewing 101 there. So here's what he's given the coordinates of the moon. Here's what he starts to see. So session 1 starts to track the moon's surface, and he sees what he sees as rows of large, really big sort of tractor tread marks in the dust on the moon, the dirt on the moon. And he doesn't understand what it could be to begin with, because this is the dark side of the moon. We're not supposed to have ever been over there, right? So he gets another set of coordinates, and he sees some sort of dark rock, and this lines up with some of the stuff you guys have already said, and it has a shiny quality to it, something along the lines of obsidian, like a really shiny rock.
Okay.
Whitish, fluffy sand, patterns in the sand of some kind, made into, as like a deliberately made pattern of some kind. And when he starts seeing all these bits and pieces, he's like, oh man, I'm fucking up. This isn't the moon. This can't be the moon. Like, the moon is just craters and dirt. I'm seeing like evidence of something else, some sort of civilization fucking with shit over here. So on the session 2, he keeps seeing this stuff, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm fucking this up for you. I'm looking at something on the moon. Let me just take a break." So he takes a break. Session 3, he goes back again, and he just keeps seeing this stuff. Like, he's inside a crater this time, and he sees this greenish haze and some kind of light. And beyond the greenish haze, it's all dark around him. And then he sees actual rows of lights. And he describes them as sort of lights at football arenas, high up, banks of them, up on towers of some kind. And then he starts saying, like, have the Russians built a moon base or something? Is that what I'm supposed to be looking at? Some country on Earth has flown to the moon and started building shit over here? And so they don't answer him. They don't, like, give him any, they just want to get whatever information they can from him. So session 4 starts to see more of this stuff now. And it seems like they're starting him further back and bringing him closer to the center, which it sounds like they knew basically where they were wanting him to end up, but they're kind of like bringing him closer and closer to the actual target they want him to see.
Yeah.
So now he sees more of this like fog and dust in the air, and he starts to hear a thumping noise, like he's hearing a boom, 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 like some sort of generator or something, a digging machine, I don't know. And now he's a better view of these light towers at this time, and he says it's almost like they're these prefab built towers with struts and stuff coming out of them. He estimates them to be 100 feet tall, so everything's massive. These tractor tread marks are everywhere. And he views a glimpse of the crater's edge with a very large tower on it. And he says, yeah, it's so big. It's really, really big. He says,
how big? So big.
Tell me,
God, it's
was
so
it wide too?
thick.
Like,
Yeah.
Give me more details.
And it was just throbbing.
I bet.
So
Was it Axelrod or piston? I want to know.
the bros. So he says it was about the size of the UN building in New York, which is about 39 floors. Sorry, it's like this huge tower that's on the dark side of the moon, apparently. And now he starts to wonder, like, this is a moon base. Like, this is what I'm seeing is some big base structure on the moon. It's really big stuff. Again, he keeps, like, just surprised by how massive this stuff is. He says, I was now completely certain that I was physically present in some kind of ultra secret place, and that the mission of this place was to sort out extraterrestrial matters. I knew that NASA must have photographic evidence of activities on the moon which already confirmed the presence of extraterrestrial activity there. So now he's like, holy shit, he starts to freak out. Like really starts to like emotionally break down, he says in the book. And he needs a moment to work through all this. Like, holy, we're looking at like some sort of alien species on the moon. That's insane. But then he really starts thinking about why they're asking him to do this. And he works out that remote viewing this area is the only way this clandestine group who's hired him, and the only way they can actually see what's happening with these ETs on the moon, because they can't get close enough now. Which means, and this is what he says, I can't believe this unless they somehow have told you to stay away and somehow have shown you that they mean it. This is what he's saying, the aliens to the clandestine group, right?
Ooh.
So they are not friendly, are they? Are they, Axelrod? He's asking him, and they don't give him any answers. He's just like, I'm going to tell you shit, bro. So...
no cuddles. No cuddles.
No cuddles on this one, big guy. So the only major way now to spy on this group, and he just calls them these guys, the aliens on the backside of the moon, is to resort to psychic abilities, which is he notes, which in the mainstream right now, the media and everyone is trying to make great efforts to try and discredit any sort of psychic abilities in the mainstream. So here's where we get to, Josh, where it lines up with your stuff. So now he gets even closer, and these locations proved really confusing to him. And he had to draw them multiple times to try and work out what it was and trying to wrap his head around it. So he says, I found towers, machinery, lights of different colors, strange-looking buildings. I found bridges whose function I couldn't figure out. One of them just arched out and never landed anywhere. It just was like a half-built bridge, I guess. There were a lot of domes of various sizes, round things like small saucers with windows.
Yeah, I got a lot of that too. I didn't hit those details up when I was going, but exactly what you're saying is what these guys say.
Yeah, so I think this lines up perfectly with what you're saying, and I don't know if it's exactly the same thing that another remote viewer has seen, or it was actually Ingo in that story. But he goes into detail of a few different things here. So there were things stored in next to craters' sides, sometimes in caves, sometimes in what looked like airfield hangars. He had problems estimating sizes, but these things were fucking massive, he kept saying over and over again. He found long tube-like things, machinery, tractor-like things going up and down hills, straight roads extending some miles, obelisks, which had no apparent function, just kind of standing out in the middle of nowhere. Large platforms on domes, it goes on and on. It's just basically crazy structures all over the place. Then he says there were these nets over craters, houses in which someone obviously lived, except that I couldn't see who, save in one case. In that case, I saw some kind of people busy at work on something I could not figure out. The place was dark, the air was filled with a fine dust, and there was some kind of illumination like a dark lime green fog or mist. The thing about them, these people, was that they were human, or they looked exactly like us, but they were all males, as I could see well since they were all butt-ass naked. So they were just, all their dangly bits were like flopping
naked
around.
Thing. Okay, it's interesting.
Yep. Which, if you're digging holes, that's got to be cumbersome. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so they seem to be digging into a hillside or a cliff. As I described, they must have had some way of creating a good environment, warm, with air in it. But why they would be going around naked, he had no idea. So the next part is where things get a little sinister, right? Exactly like you described before, Josh. So while viewing the humanoid activity, he claims that they became aware of his psychic penetration, and they turned and looked at him as though they could feel some sort of dimensional disruption taking place. So he says, but being there in my psychic state, as I felt I was, some of those guys started talking excitedly and gesticulating. That's just moving your hands around, guys.
Oh,
it's a good
okay.
Just your hands.
Thank
Such
you.
a writer. So smart.
Just your hands. Not anything else.
Just your hands.
They were pointing with their... Anyway, so two of them...
Swinging their helmets. Yeah, I get it.
I don't
Two
get
of them
it.
Two of them pointed in my direction, thrusting their hips. No, I added that. Immediately, I felt like running away and hiding, which I guess psychically I did, since I lost sight of this particular imaging. I think they've spotted me, he says to Axel. They were pointing at me, I think. How could they do that unless they have some kind of psychic perceptions too? Axel said, and this is one of the only times he ever sort of gave me an answer, he said in a calm, low voice, so low I hardly even heard it at first. So he says, please quickly come out of that place. My eyes were wide as understanding drained in. You already know they are psychic, don't you? Axelrod raised his eyebrows and gave a deep sigh. So Swan, after this session, he felt like he was in danger, like these things knew who he was, they knew he was looking at him. And he vocally raised these concerns about whether or not these alien beings would try to come after him after this and try to kill him after he had penetrated their homes.
I'm so sorry.
Penetrated, yeah.
So he got a few answers after this because I guess he was kind of freaking out. So Axelrod admits that the humanoid Swan observed had certain capabilities, obviously psychic capabilities, that they were trying to get a better understanding of. But he assured Swan that there was nothing to suggest he would become a target of these beings. Axelrod was completely tight-lipped about any further inquiries made by Ingo, so he just basically shut him off after that. They got what they needed after that, and they didn't contact him again, So yeah, that's basically the Ingo story of the moon. There's a civilization living there who want nothing to do with us and making contact, I guess, or just tell us to fuck off all the time.
Did he say what
And
they
this
look
is
like? Did he give a description?
He just says they were naked. In this thing I was reading about it, I don't have the book. I need to get that book because it sounds pretty crazy.
Okay.
But that's interesting because that kind of correlates to Josh's story where he says that they're also naked and they're a complete civilization. Like, they, obviously it was a little bit more friendly, whatever interaction the remote viewers had with Josh's story. But they want nothing to do with Earth. They left Earth and they have their own civilization.